welcome to the Christian Athlete Podcast. I'm Ashley Hott, and I'll be interviewing today your beloved host, Kennedy Luewellyn. She was a former Bama track athlete, and now she's pursuing her career in the film industry. I've known her for 4 years now. We ran track together, and we came to know Christ together, and she's just one of my best friends, and I'm so excited to be interviewing her today. And this past week, I was like, hey, you're interviewing everyone, but you and your testimony needs to be heard. So I'm so excited. Help me welcome Kennedy Luewellyn. Hello, Kennedy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So like I said in the intro, guys, this is Kennedy, my friend for around 4 years now. We met in high school, and we ran track together, and now she's at Alabama State. Not Alabama State. Alabama.
Oh,
It is Alabama.
it is the state of Alabama.
Yes, it's in the state of Alabama. And I'm right now in Frisco, Texas, but we were talking this week, and I was like, you are interviewing a lot of people, but someone needs to interview you because your testimony is powerful, and I think people need to hear it. Also with the whole sport thing, because it is a sports, like an athlete podcast, but a lot of her testimony has to do with sports and kind of getting away from like identifying herself with that and coming to know Christ and surrendering herself to that. So so happy to have you on my podcast today.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for having me also, and being my friend and all of that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for being my friend. And I'm excited to answer the questions you have for me.
Okay. Let's start with something. I want to start with something funny. Do you remember anything that we did together that was like fun or funny or anything?
I do actually. And I actually sent this to you like a few days ago, that like photo message I got. And it had the videos of us when when COVID first happened, and we were all in the weight room, and I was recording like, what was it? When we were like day 28 in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I still have that. And it was so funny because like, who knew, like I was recording it as a joke, but who knew that we for real were not gonna go back to school after March.
Right.
That was weird.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Kennedy has been taking, and by the way, this is our friend. She's here to listen because she won't be quiet. So, but I remember during high school, Kennedy would be recording everything, funny videos or just like interviews. So sometimes we had like a interview at the indoor meet at A&M or something like that.
I remember that.
But so she has so many funny videos. The other day I was watching, and maybe you can link this down below, but we have a video from Hebron track of like the jump rope thing. And I guess maybe it's not that funny, but to me, since I was there, I was like, this is hilarious. And it took me back. I was like, was I actually here like a high schooler,
Oh my
running track and all this? But I was like, yeah, she's been videotaping stuff for so long. And so it's not a surprise that she's in the film industry and all that, but it is a surprise to me if I saw myself from high school to now that you're doing it for Jesus, for Christ and all that, because in high school it wasn't that way, and we were friends, but we weren't like sisters in Christ or anything. So my first question is, first of all, when did you start doing sports? And you can kind of say like where you started, and anything else along that line.
Yeah, so I started, honestly, I can't even like pinpoint the exact like year when I started, but like it was definitely when I was younger. My mom and pretty much my entire family saw that like I had potential in athletics, and just like the one thing that was always pointed out was just my speed and my ability to run. And so I didn't start running track until like I was in 5th grade. And before I was even doing that, I was also in gymnastics, swimming, ballet, anything to keep me active. Um, but once I started running track, that was kind of like, okay, this is my sport. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I just knew I had like a just natural like draw to that sport. If that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that was kind of how I got into sports, was just like my mom just noticed it. And so also it was a really good outlet for me just as a child, because I was like that super active child, just like outgoing. Like
Yeah.
if you literally gave me a ball, I could like shoot hoops or something. I don't know, but yeah, that was definitely that was definitely something that my mom saw. And so yeah, that, I mean, it basically took off from there. I went to um I started doing club track in fifth
Mhm.
grade, and at that time I was already in Texas because I moved to Texas when I was in fifth grade.
Okay.
So I got on a club team there. It was called the Carrollton Cougars. Shout out to Coach B.
I
He was
was
my
on
first
that
ever.
team too.
Whoa, were you for real?
Yes, probably different years, but I was there for 1 year. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You know, I also met like Anthony on that team,
Okay.
and yeah, that's basically how we grew up together. And then we went to high school and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, I met a lot of people
yeah.
that went to Hebron who were on that team.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I was with Girls and Cougars.
Oh,
That was definitely a good start for me. Yeah, I enjoyed that team. It has like a core memory in my mind now. But I'm so grateful for everyone on that team, especially my first ever track coach, Coach B, Coach Bemis. If you're watching this, hey. But yeah, that's where it really started. And then from there on, took it to middle school, which I believe I stopped running like summer track, club track, probably like midway through middle school. And then after that, I didn't get back into it. But by then, like I had already piled on, academics, extracurricular activities. And so it was just too much to handle. But yeah, through middle school, I started to run track and, started to get stronger. And then high school came around, and yeah, high school was fun. Good times in track. Um, and then
you
on to
didn't
college.
start you didn't start running track like full time, right? Because you were in band the first 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, I was in band the first 3 years, and then after, which I love band, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, After my junior year, I just something told me like, okay, you're done. Like it's time to move on. Like I wanted to focus on track, and so that's what I did. So when I got there, yeah, then I like was track full time, which was so weird at first because I was like, this is like I'm not used to being here in the off season. I'm so used to being like outside the
The
parking lot. What?
worst.
The what?
The worst, like the first time that you go through off season just feels like
Oh,
not the move.
yeah. It was really interesting for me. I was like, wow, this is what y'all did? I missed all this.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It was a really interesting change up, but I think it was good for me, especially heading into my first collegiate year at Bama, because I mean the schedule was even more rigorous, and just like training hours, um, how much I never really took into account how much work you had to put in even off the track. Like I knew you had to go to like recovery and do all that stuff, but just like constantly getting reminders like, hey, training, training, go see your trainer at 6:30 in the morning. And then you have a meet on Friday and Saturday. So it was definitely a lot, but yeah, that's basically how my entire sports career looked. So yeah.
Yeah. When did so you ran track or you did sports since like fifth grade? But when did Jesus and like Christianity pretty much start to intersect with like sports and not really intersect with like you running and stuff, but at what time did you start to like know about Jesus?
So really, honestly, I say like I really met or not met, but I really be like, man, I cannot talk today. No, but I really decided like 2020 quarantine, that area, that like, all right, I'm gonna start living for the Lord, like, because
Mhm.
I have more time to spend with him. But like junior year was kind of when I started to become a lot more curious about it. But like I wouldn't say that, oh, that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start living for the Lord. Because I didn't even know what that looked like at that point.
Yeah.
But you know, now I'm trying to wait, hold on now, because maybe it wasn't junior year. Oh, it was senior year. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got that mixed up. I'm sorry. Junior, senior year were kind of like a blur for a second. But no, it was actually senior year. So that was actually when I started to get close to the Lord. And
Okay.
then leading up to quarantine and then like mid quarantine, that's where I really found the Lord. But leading up to it, I was just kind of like, I would pray before races, and I'd just be like, I just want to have a good race.
Yeah.
And like, I just pray that it's for your glory, but I didn't really understand what that really meant. I was like, how do I don't understand how this relates to like glorifying you, but I didn't really learn that until my freshman year of college,
Okay.
like what it meant to truly like do what you do for God.
Yeah.
And the verse that was brought to me when I was like asking God, I was like, how I don't understand like how I'm supposed to glorify you in this. Like I just couldn't understand it, but I wanted to understand. And the
Yeah.
verse that the Lord brought to me was Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, which says, whatever you do, work at it with your whole heart as though you're working for the Lord and not for men. And I was like, oh, so just work as hard as I can and do it for you, as though I'm like working for you and not for men, you know? And that includes myself too, not for myself. And so that's kind of when that kind of like snapped. And I was like, oh, that makes more sense now. But
Right.
I mean, even then, I was still like battling with my pride and just like allowing myself to shift from this is all about me. This is all about, how I look on the track, what I wear, how everyone sees me, instead of like it being about God and saying, like, He put me in the sport and I'm going to do it for Him. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of how that whole shift happened and how that kind of changed how I saw stuff. So,
Yeah. And also, I was gonna say, I remember, so your senior year, I was a junior. Yeah, I was a junior. Um, and your senior year, that's when we were closest, but you were very ambitious about your goals. And you did I remember there was a time that you were trying to get by the end of the track season, and you got it. If
yeah.
I'm not mistaken, right?
It was so I think this a while back. I'm pretty sure the goal time was the 44. Because
Okay.
that was actually the school record for
Yeah.
my high
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
And so that was my actual goal time. I think it was maybe my second to last goal time, which was the 45. Um, so yeah, that's what I hit.
Okay.
But yeah, I was very ambitious about my goals. I was like, I gotta hit all the goals this year. And it's a good thing that I had that kind of attitude
Yes.
because
Yes.
little did we know that
And
last race.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was trying to get at, because it's like you're supposed to be ambitious for the right things, of course. And what I was thinking about is like your senior year, very ambitious about your goals. And then Jesus started to like intersect in all of that, like you trying to, do like your best, but also run track in college and all that. Um, where like how did you kind of start to navigate your like ambition, which was kind of like out of like pride or wanting to do stuff for yourself, and how did you start doing it for God? Or what was that like battle right in between there?
Yeah, it was definitely like constant. I can't even explain it. It was just a lot of like headbutting with the Lord and just like trying to do my own thing while trying to also figure out how to do that or like
Yeah.
his thing. And so it was just constant like battle in like with myself and with the Lord. But um he also just showed me like he kind of revealed to me like I do make track my identity, and that kind of was I knew it was true. That's the thing though. Like I wasn't gonna like there were times where I was like, no, not really. I mean, who like we were here at the track 24/7. Like, how can I not make it who I am? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's really hard to see yourself outside the sport when you've been in it for like almost a decade.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to like swallow that pill. But once I really like understood it and just allow him to be like, yeah, or just like seeing it for myself, like, yeah, I do kind of make this my identity. Like, that's when I was like, all right, well, that's not good. Well, how do I make it not my identity?
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, all right, I just need to understand first, like, who I am in Christ, and
Yeah.
understand the identity that he already gave us before the earth was even created. And that was what was most important. It was understanding that and you know, understanding what he like I don't even know how to put this, but like understanding that yes, your sport is important, but like what I put you on this earth to do, like past your sport is even more important, you know? I can't run track forever. That'd be
Yeah.
crazy if I could, you know, if I was 100 years old. I mean, they have that too. I think it's called the Masters. Yeah. But they do have that, which is cool. That won't be me though. But yeah, I mean like, you know, I can't do track forever, you know? I'm gonna
Yeah.
eventually go off and do some other thing. And you know, it's just like if I held on to my identity in track, like I'd be stagnant. Like I wouldn't be able to go anywhere because I'd feel like I can't let go of this one thing. And
Right.
so learning to just understand like, yes, track is great, but what I have for you and what I put you on this earth to do is greater. And God is greater too. Um, that definitely helped me to just kind of be able to navigate through that and
Mhm.
be able to understand his point of view. So
Yeah. And I was gonna ask also because it reminded me, but in in between changing pretty much changing your identity. I know we toss that word around, but changing who you are and into something else obviously better, but it's not really rainbows and sunshine when you do that because you've identified with the sport so long. Um, but then you have to kind of transition into, okay, my identity isn't in my sport now, crossing that bridge to my identity is in Christ. And in that bridge, I feel like there's a lot of self-doubt, loneliness. I'm not good enough because everything was based on your performance for a long time. And then for me, it was I'm kind of forced not to perform. And so I'm like, okay, who am I? I'm not that good. I'm not, all of that. And that's kind of the bridge to, um, you know, identifying with Christ. But for you, what was the hardest thing you had to overcome in changing your identity, pretty much changing who you are into
mhm.
Christ?
Yeah, definitely. I'd also say I struggled with like pride and just having that mindset of like, oh, I'm better than you because I have the backpack with the name tag on it that has my number and my
Yeah.
sport. And that for me, like, it took me a long time to get past that because, like I said, I just made that sport my identity. And like, I made everything with it my identity, the gear
Yeah.
we got, like, you know, the name tags, whatever. And so I'd also just say my pride. And I put a lot of pride into like what I wore and like I said, the backpack. And I literally had to stop wearing the backpack because I recognized it and I was like, okay, this is just not okay. Why am I letting this piece of fabric with zippers on it
Yeah.
determine my worth,
Yeah.
determine how I see other people? It didn't
Yeah.
make it. So I was like, I need to humble myself. So I went back to the backpack, what's it called? The North Face backpack. I love that backpack. Okay. I've had it since I was like in high school.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a great backpack and it's worthy of
Mhm.
me to wear it again.
To
So
wear it. Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, I need to like lay this down, whatever that looks like, whatever that means I have to do. I have to lay that pride down by whatever means necessary because I knew it's going to hinder my relationship with God. It's going to hinder the way I see his creation. And I really didn't like I got to a point where I was like, I'm kind of fed up with how I act towards people. It's not okay to sit here and be like, oh, you know, I'm on this team and you see my backpack, so you already know I'm better than you. Like that was kind of the mindset that I had. I made sure
Yeah.
people saw I was rocking the backpack. And so, yeah, I was like, hello. But yeah, so I was like, it needs to change, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm really glad that I'm able to like just put that past me now. I have the backpack under my bed. I was like, I'm not touching it ever again. Yeah. But now it's just memorabilia, so
Uh-huh. Well, that's good. Um, so there's there's a saying, but I just heard it somewhere, but it was and it's really true because it really goes into anything, not even just changing your identity, but um like when you let go of something, you have to fill it with something greater. And so in that circumstance, it could mean anything, but with you kind of looking towards performance for a lot of your identity, how did you put Christ into that empty circle once you kind of let go of that? And not even I kind of mean more practical steps because it's easy to say oh yeah, I just started believing, but what made you believe? Or like, was it that like you read the Bible more, or was it that you kind of just meditated on stuff, or what was it that helped you like fill that gap with Jesus?
Yeah. It was definitely just honestly just like reading the word and just being able to like understand more about who God is, and also just listening to what he was speaking through me through like desires and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time also like I was also wanting to go into media, and I kind of knew this where God wanted me to go. And that was also the time where I started to like figure some more of this stuff out. And so I listened to that and I decided to step away. And with that also came trust. But with that trust, you got to take that step, that like leap of faith. Like it's
Yeah.
one thing to believe that he's gonna take you here and take you this place and like believe that this is where he wants you to go, but it's also another thing to like take that leap of faith and that
Right.
like action of trust and saying like I trust you with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that first step. And so with that I was just like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like, let's just do it. I'm just gonna sit here and I'm going to obey you, and
Yeah.
whatever that looks like for now, I'm just gonna rock with it because I know that you're gonna have greater for me, and just stay on my knees and pray. So
Right. And that reminds me of a verse that says, like, God puts the desire in your heart and then the strength to do it. And it was like, I mean, it's no coincidence of the timing of that, because he first puts the desire, then the will, like the strength and the will to do that, which he put in you already. And it's like, and I mean, it's the Christian life to literally follow God, like the desire he put in your heart, but not know like the first step of how that's going to happen or come to pass or anything. Um, and it's like a lot of, and I was listening to Robert Madu, if you know who that is,
mm,
um, pastor of Social Dallas, but he was saying like nobody talks about it, but the Christian life is literally filled with so much uncertainty and doubt because he puts the desire first. But then you have to wait for the next step. And he doesn't even tell you like, oh, here's the next 20 steps of how we're gonna see like that vision that I put in you come to pass. He only gives you the next step, like only the light that's right in front of you. And then you have to keep doing the step and stuff like that. So it's really inspiring to hear you just following through, but also that you did have to struggle before even coming to know Christ, but then having to switch over, to actually like not even just, oh, I'm a follower. It's like actually following him and doing like the work that needs to be done to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, okay. So once you got to college, I mean, I don't know exactly your audience, but I think a big thing is going to college and your whole world being rocked because you're not by your family. You are like 10, are you like 14 hours away from home?
Oh, I'm 8 hours.
Okay, 8 hours.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a huge thing. I was like 3 hours. So, I mean, it's not that far, but your first year, because we talked a lot your first year, being away from home, the huge shift, I mean, college life and college people, how did you navigate that with still trying to follow Jesus and like progress your journey? Also, I remember that your first year, you were struggling a lot, but you had a lot of discernment over what God was telling you, even through like the whole shift. So if you
Oh
want to
yeah.
talk about
Yeah, so I mean, going into it, like I said, like the months prior or leading up to moving into college, I was like focusing on God and trying to just grow that relationship. But I knew like heading into college, I was like, all right, I know what it's gonna look like for the most part. Everyone's gonna be indulging in their own flesh desires.
that?
And I know that that's not what God wants for us because he knows what's best. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try my best. I'm gonna stick with the Lord through it all, no matter what that looks like. I'm just gonna try to focus on him. And also since y'all were like back in Oklahoma and y'all were going to Oklahoma, and it's just, well, no, because you were a senior at the time, so y'all were back at home.
Was Yeah, the first year I was a senior.
Yeah.
Your first
So,
year, yes.
hmm so with that like shift of not having all down the street where we could just hang out or go to the track, it was
Yeah.
kind of weird because I was like, I don't really know too many people here, and like I don't have that same, you know, connection as I do with y'all. And so it threw me off a little bit, but also I just knew like I still have God, and if I didn't have God, I wouldn't have anything. So if I have Him, then I know I'll be all right. And I just
Yeah.
need to like keep that connection with Him, and He'll lead me to the right people. And He did. And that's when I started going to FCA my freshman year. I forgot who. I think honestly, I have such I've said this before, y'all. I have such bad memory, but I cannot remember how I like began going to FCA here. I think I just saw it on a flyer or something somewhere, but
Like you
that's when
told it was it your freshman year that you started going? You
yeah,
said? Yeah.
yeah. I
Didn't
cannot
someone
remember.
invite you? Keaton, right?
No, I saw Keaton one day.
Oh, okay, okay.
She came
Okay.
after because yeah,
Okay.
she's a great one. But yes, um, yeah, I legit cannot remember how I got there. But anyways, I got there, and so that's when I started to get that like godly community. And at the time, also I wasn't going to in-person church because of COVID, and they kind of wanted to keep us in a bubble. They weren't preventing us from going to church. I honestly just never really had the time, so I just watched a lot of online services. But yeah, that's where I also just kind of tried to just keep up with God and stuff. And also like because I was so new to like actually stepping into this relationship with him, I thought I was doing bad in everything. I was like, because I was still in that like religious mindset where it was
Yes.
like, oh, if
Yeah.
I don't do this right, that means I'm not gonna get this. And if I don't
Yeah.
get this, then how am I supposed to get that? And it was really not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
But
I remember that. You kind of telling me, I mean, you told me the inside of kind of your like daily life and devotion and all that stuff. And then you'd be like, I just feel like I'm just not doing enough. And I was like,
yeah,
first of all, you're doing better than me. And I think you're doing better than 90% of Christians, but you were really hard on yourself. But I can see that grace kind of came in and took over.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly wish, and this is another thing I just wish sooner how I knew like the devil attacks you and attacks your mind
Yes.
because and I feel like I'm a pro at knowing when he attacks and how he attacks nowadays because I'll be thinking to myself and I'll be like yada 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 and then I'm like wait a second, these are my thoughts and these are not God's thoughts. That's
Yes.
the enemy. So
Yes.
let me go ahead and so but yeah, I wish I had known that sooner honestly, and maybe I wouldn't have been so hard on myself. But I mean, I'm just happy that God was always there for me, even when I couldn't see it. He was like always right there, just leading me step by step. So it was always nice. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Forgot what the question was, but it answered it for sure.
Okay.
What you just said about how the devil attacks, that reminded me of Tony Evans has a sermon that's like how the devil attacks or his strategies and stuff. And I think a lot of people are missing that part of how he attacks because it's like, and maybe pastors do talk about it a lot, but like I was missing that piece for so long because if your thoughts are just your thoughts and you're not thinking that the devil can come into your thoughts by music or by TV shows, movies, or your past like starts to come back to your mind, like you are the most vulnerable to him actually taking out his plan for you, which is to kill and destroy, steal, kill, and destroy, right? But like having to even just do a deep dive of like researching, reading the scripture over it, because if you don't know, like you're the most vulnerable. And like you said, like once you started knowing how he attacks, then you're like a pro at it because you start thinking thoughts that aren't godly or righteous, and you're like, I rebuke that because it's not coming from me, and I think that's very important because I just started getting that type of discernment now, which is like, oh, I can think something, and that's obviously your flesh versus your spirit, which is things that God thinks about and all that. But your flesh can think about all things, and it's deadly, like you can think about things that you keep thinking about and start just destroying your life because you start acting on those things. And without knowing it's the devil, like you start destroying your own life, like you by yourself, you know? But I thought that is really powerful.
I'll also say, like, as an athlete, especially like particularly in college, there's a lot of like mental health um issues for a lot of college athletes that goes unnoticed simply because people think we don't have problems because we're in the spotlight and we get attention.
Yeah.
I didn't get attention. That's okay though. But I don't know, it's different in every sport. But yeah, no, like the devil attacks, like his attacks are just, oh, I hate him. Like, it's just like he'll attack you like with your own, like how you perform. Like he'll just say like you did so bad. Like look at that, like that was awful. Like because especially if you're a Christian, well, I mean, I feel like if you're non-Christian or you are Christian, like
Yeah.
and you care about how you perform, um, the devil's gonna attack you
Right. With anything you
regardless.
care about, he's gonna
Yeah,
attack you in that.
anything you care about, yeah,
Yeah.
he's gonna attack.
And specifically for athletes, I feel like the most prized possession for you, especially if you identify yourself with your performance, that's where he's going to attack because it's already a sin in itself. So he's going to like make it even bigger, you know, and implement your sin already. But um, what was I going to say? Oh, I feel like with athletes, the most is they're not able, because it happened to me and it happened to you, like you said earlier, but like we don't know that we're actually identifying ourselves with our performance. And I think we all kind of get the gist, but we don't really want to confront it or, you know, expose it because it's not pretty, like, especially if you're already a Christian or something. But I think exposing it is obviously something you should do, but like, what was I gonna say? Oh, like before that, you don't know it until you can't have it anymore. Like pretend you get injured, you know? Like once you're injured, you can't run. You're sitting out on all the workouts, you're seeing everybody else work out. And I think that's when it exposes itself because you start feeling the worst that you've ever felt, you know?
Yeah.
And that means you identified yourself with that. But what I was gonna ask is what are some like things that people can do or that helped you kind of figure out what was wrong with like identifying yourself with like performance? That wasn't a good question. Kind of like um how do they figure out if they're doing that even like a little bit, because sometimes it's not like a full-blown thing, but even if it's like, oh, I'm not getting enough attention, like, and they start, you know, acting out or we start
Mhm.
acting out, whoever. But how can you start identifying that?
Well, first thing I'll say is it starts with humility and being able to say, like, recognize it and accept it, like, for what it is. Because you got to be able to, like, do a self evaluation.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Christian, you want to, and you usually want to do self evaluations, but, like, it's also just important to, like, recognize, like, this area where, like, you're putting your worth into something that it turns into an idol. And what I'm saying is like you got to know like this is an idol in my heart and I need to tear it down. So with my sport was an idol in my heart and I needed to tear it down because I wasn't putting God first. And it honestly like destroyed me when it was an idol in my heart and when I had to take it down too because I was like, no, but I love it. But God's like, girl, let me tell you something. I'm a little better than that. Actually, a lot better than that. And he is. But definitely like it starts with humility and being able to recognize like, okay, I do hold this like close to my heart and not close to your heart, but like I do identify with it and I put like my worth into it. So it starts with humility and then it also starts with recognizing like, okay, now that I've become more aware of that, how is it like affecting my performance or not performance? What was I gonna say? Oh, it's about understanding how the devil attacks, like I said.
Yeah.
Because I really feel like that's really important, especially the patterns, especially if you get injured a lot. I know
Oh
for a lot of
yeah.
people, they are so hard on themselves when they get injured,
Yes.
and they just want to bounce back after like 48 hours. And I'm like, don't do that. But it's hard for them because it's like they don't know, like, okay, what do I do? I just want to go out there. But it's like,
Mhm.
listen, like, take time to rest and recover. Like, don't listen to how the devil was just like, oh, look at you on the sidelines. Like, you're worthless now. Like, what are you gonna do? You're never gonna come back. Like, that's not true. Um, but yeah, I mean, those are definitely a lot of signs that show like maybe you are um making the sport your identity.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta ask yourself, like, would I be okay if, you know, all of a sudden this sport was taken away from me? Whether that be an injury, whether that be God taking it away or something. But like,
Right.
would that be okay? Like,
Yeah.
would I still be whole
Yeah.
with God if that got taken away?
Yeah. That reminds me of there's a saying that says like if a lot of people think they can control whatever's actually controlling them, but it's like if you can't live without it, then it's controlling you. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, if you can't go one day without it, but like if you really can't hold, like if you can't follow God and like actually do the things God has called you, without that one thing, then it's definitely controlling you. You know, like if you start having negative thoughts when you don't have it or that idol, or if you start acting out, or you just don't feel yourself, you don't want to do things, like that's definitely like
Yeah.
a red flag for, you know, that change needs to happen.
Yeah. I would also say if it like hinders your relationship with God, that's
Yeah.
like really big because sometimes we want something so much and we kind of like think to ourselves, or we almost like say, okay, God, if you're not going to give me this, then I'm not going to go do that, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Like, I don't want to talk to you because you're not giving me this. Like, that's honestly a really big sign that, you know, you're putting your worth in this, like you're making it your idol,
Mhm.
and that's what you don't want to do. So yeah.
Right. Okay, this question I really, really want to hear your answer, and then I also want to say something after. But so we both stopped running track, but we were also able to like stop identifying ourselves with that um, while we were in the sport still, because you were still running at Bama, but then you decided and God led you to not run anymore. But for people who are still like in their sport for college or whatever it might be, how can they still be good at their sport while doing it all with God if they do have a past of, you know, performance based, you know, thinking and identity? What would be your advice for that?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say my advice would just be to understand that, like, God has given you this gift and it's not for your own glory but for his.
Okay.
And recognizing that, like, the like we should be honored to have this gift that he's given us. Like, if God sent me to the track right now and was like, get back on that team, like, I'd be like, yes sir. And
Yeah.
this time I'm not doing it for my glory or anyone else's glory. I'm doing it for you because I know
Yes.
you now.
Yes.
So, like, just understanding that our gifts were given to us as a blessing and as a gift. And like, we should, like, we got to take that in and be like, all right, this is for you, God. Every time I step on this track, every time I'm doing a warm up, every time I'm doing a workout, like, this is for you because I'm grateful for the gifts and the talents that you've given to me, for your glory, you know. And so, and like I said, holding on to that verse, Colossians 3:23, which I'll say it again, it says, whatever you do, or whatever you work at, do it all for the Lord. Um, or whatever you work at, do it with your entire heart as though you're working for the Lord, not for men. Yeah, hold on to that verse. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't even, gosh, I wish I could just let everyone know, even people who aren't Christian. I mean, this is what this podcast is for, but like, your sport is just, it's not your identity, and it's really pulling you down when you make it your identity,
Yeah.
because you identify with your bad performances, your good performances. So your identity's going like this. Your identity's here one day, then it's down here, then it's up here, then it's up here. And then when you're injured, it's just here. So it's just like,
It's
is that
hurting
how you,
them more. Yeah.
yeah, it hurts you bad. And once you finally allow God to like work on that in your heart, you're going to see the difference. I'm not saying that you won't care about how you perform. You honestly might care more.
Yeah.
And but for the fact that like God has given you this gift and that it's for his glory. And it just makes it great, honestly. But like yeah, like whatever, I mean, even if you're not an athlete and you're out there working, whatever it is, whether you're a janitor, you're flipping burgers, I don't care what it is. Do
Yeah.
it all for the Lord, because he has given you this gift and he's put you in this position at this point in time for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that should like make you feel like you have to do this for yourself and for your glory, because it's really not. It's not for your glory, and it's for God, and it just makes it so much better. I'm sorry.
I
Sorry.
think what you said is just right, like just perfect. With like starting with humility. I know that's not what you said right now, but earlier you were like, it should start with humility, because if they're still doing their sport, and want to do good, obviously, the first step would be humility. So when they're about to race or about to play a game, like you did, like pray before, and obviously at that time you weren't like fully devoted, but like that is how it looks. Like you pray before, like you don't you have to also kind of pinpoint your anxiety over stuff, because sometimes anxiety for a race or a game can be tied to your pride. Like, oh, if I don't do good, then I'm going to feel terrible, then no one's going to like me, and then I'm not going to be like the star athlete. It kind of trickles down like that. But um humbling yourself to say, like, God, like, I give you this game. And like, if we win or we lose, God, you're still going to be my God. And I'm still going to praise you. I'm still going to worship you. Like, all of that takes humility. And it takes kind of like being that servant of like, however this goes, I want you to still be glorified and worshiped and all that. And for everything, kind of like the backpack thing that you said, that needs to be humility. Like, you were still an athlete, but I said, since it's bothering you, you're going to wear the North Face, backpack and stuff.
Mhm.
Small things that it doesn't even have to be when you get to a race, like you have to be humble. No, it's like with everything. Like when you're walking around, when you meet people and they're not as good as whoever, like humility in all things, and that's going to give glory to God. Because when someone sees an athlete and that should be, celebrated and praised and should have a lot of pride, but instead they're humble, like that's a big testimony in itself. You don't even have to say, oh, Jesus died for your sins. They're going to want to know what you have that everybody else doesn't have, and that's going to be something impactful for people who aren't Christians. So, and I think showing your faith is like the biggest testimony, because then people are more curious and they'll come and get to you and ask you, oh, what, try to like see what it's about. But yeah, I was gonna say my senior year was the year that I actually started like where I started not identifying myself with track. And that was my best year by far. It was my first year running the 800, but and I remember talking to you about this, but it was like I had not, like when I got on the track, I used to, oh my gosh, like I don't know if you were the same way, but like when I was about to race, I had the most anxiety. Like I had the problem where before I ran the 400, I was already tired
Oh yeah.
because of like my heart racing, the adrenaline. And it wasn't good adrenaline, because some adrenaline is good, but like it was to the point where I was like out of breath, about to faint because I couldn't breathe. And that was because everyone was watching, the time mattered, I want to be on varsity, all of that. And if that didn't matter, then I would be fine, because I'm like, okay, I'm running the race for God. Like whatever I do, it's in his hands and his will is going to be done. And whatever that might be, win or lose, like at least it's what he wanted. But senior year was so much different. Running the 800, I feel like that's the hardest race ever. I thought it was the 400. After you run the 800, best believe. But I remember running the 800 and not feeling one bit of anxiety before all my races. And I would say I did feel it on the 4x4, just maybe because it was a team thing. I do remember feeling that. But like when it was just me, it was like me and God, and I didn't feel that anxiety. And I feel like obviously I don't run track anymore, and you don't either. But for people who are gonna do their sport, like it doesn't mean you're going to be bad at your sport and that you're not going to be at the best you could be. Like it's going to obviously be God's will, and it doesn't mean that it's always going to be great, but um, God also wants to have a testimony of you being a Christ follower and succeeding, you know? Um, and whether it's succeeding or whatever it is, it's all going to be for his glory, which is always going to be good. Like everything good and bad will work for the good of those who love him. So obviously we have that promise that we need to cling to. But I think definitely if like you're an athlete and you're listening to this, like you will end up, you know, being successful in God's eyes, which is the most important thing to be successful in.
I will also add, it's also sorry. I will say too, whoever's watching this, like, it's also just so much more rewarding when you know that you went out there and you didn't do it for yourself. You did it for God, because he's so much greater than your sport and whatever name you're wearing. It's so much more rewarding because you really feel like you accomplished something, you know? You went out there and you did the best that you could, whether it was win or loss, you know? But yeah, that was the last part I wanted to
add. Okay, my last question. That's a good question. So, what is one thing that you have? So it doesn't. I know you've learned a lot, but what is one thing that you would like to say on here? Obviously, but that you're proud of, or that you love the most that you have learned about Jesus and your walk with him. It can be small or big, and it can be just about anything. Like, oh, I learned that, you know, he loves us besides anything. But anything that you've learned that kind of changed your walk with him, that you're like, oh my gosh, like a revelation or something.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think here. Let's see. I don't know if it really has so much to do with sports, to be honest with you. It's just kind of like what I've learned just walking with him. But I will say the one thing I love about God that he like or just kind of like exposes to me is just like how good he is and how I'll never like I'm imperfect, we're all imperfect, but like how good and perfect he is. And like those moments, and I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here, so don't judge me. But like those moments where I'm like in a low and I'm like crying to sleep, like no, but for real, like those will be the moments where like God will what is that verse? It's the one where it's like God's love is made perfect in our weakness.
Yes.
It might be God's perfection is made perfect in.
No,
God's God's strength. His strength is made perfect in our weakness.
Yes.
I think that's what it is.
I'll think about it, but keep going.
Okay, they can look up the verse. But no, like that's so true. And just to be able to experience that, I really just think that is such a gift from him and allowing his Holy Spirit to move within you. Because I'll have those nights where I'm just like crying. I'm like, I feel so like, and it'll be like normally like moments when I've just kind of like distanced myself from him. And that's the worst. If you're watching this, don't ever do that. That literally is just self-sabotage. Do not do that. It's so bad. But like moments like that where I'm like there and then I'm finally like, all right, this is getting old. And then I get back to him. He's just filled with so much love in that moment.
Yeah.
And that story, that parable that Jesus was telling his disciples, it was like, the son went off and he told his dad, like, I don't want to stay here anymore. Give me this money so I can go off and spend it how I want. And then he comes back and the dad is like, welcome.
Girl
Like,
party.
yeah, like that's how God is. And
Mhm.
I'm just so grateful for that because I can imagine if
Right?
he was like, if we tried to come back to him, he was like, "Oh, now you want to come back? Talk to me in like 2 to 3 business days." Like I'd be so hurt if he said
Right.
that. But instead, he's not like that. Like his love, he's not gonna force himself onto us. Like he's not gonna be like, "All right, come on, let's go, let's go." I mean, like in a way he does, but like not in a forceful way.
Yeah.
But I just mean like he's patient with us. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't want to be like forceful. But like I just love those moments where he's like you can really experience his love for you. And it really makes you realize I feel like I just like strayed away from the question. I'm kind of just going off my own tangent
No,
here,
you're
but
good.
like I just really enjoy being able to experience his love. And when like you break down into tears about how good and perfect he is, and you kind of recognize how imperfect you are and how much you need him, I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I can ever experience
Yeah.
because it really makes me like just encounter like who he is.
Mhm.
And we can't even comprehend who he fully is because he's just like amazing and beautiful. So yeah, I don't even know if that answered your question, but
It
yeah.
did. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. I was gonna expand on what you said about like when you're um like you separated yourself from God and you're like, don't do that, it's self-sabotage. But I feel like I don't know if everyone feels this way, but you can see, like, tell me if you do, but like the worst or more like lowest points of your life have been when you're the most separated from God. Because even when something bad happens, but you have God, I imagine that you have, because something truly bad hasn't happened where I have God in the middle of it, but I imagine that it's something quite beautiful because you have nothing and you're hurting, but you have Him and you're close to Him, and He brings as much comfort as you need, or as much as you grow close to Him, He's closer to you. But when you separate yourself from God, um, and you start self-sabotaging your life, I feel like that's the lowest points that we can go.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I would just, and especially being an athlete, like, and you have already just a lot of like stress piled onto your daily schedule.
Yeah.
Like, I just encourage, like, if you're not a follower of Christ and you're listening to this, I really encourage you to just seek out that relationship with God. Um, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but like, I'm being so serious. Like, He is everything and so much more than this world could offer. Like, whatever records you broke in high school, whatever medals you've got, that comes nothing close to God's love and His perfection. And just the relationship that He wants with you, it's so much greater than anything else on this earth. And yeah, just go after the Lord. You have nothing to lose.
Right.
Except, well, yeah, you gotta lay down your life and pick up that cross.
Yeah.
You're losing you're losing your life.
You'll lose a lot, but what you'll
Yeah,
gain is worth it.
exactly.
Awesome. Okay, Kennedy, thank you for coming on my podcast and being my special guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else you would like to say to the audience about? I mean, your ending was awesome. Um, wait, isn't it you have everything to lose?
Maybe.
I mean, the saying doesn't go that way, but you do have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
Do you not?
Oh, wait. Are you talking about the verse where it's like, I swear I cannot remember these Bible verses, but it's like, you gain the whole world, but you lose your life.